Sup peeps, my name's Ian. I sell books on eBay. Today, just now, this moment, reached the end of the month, so that's November past, so I thought I'd do a wee kind of update refresh on the video that I did at the start of November, which was what I managed to earn, how the business went in the first year, and let's take a look at November the same way and see just what happened. Top level numbers, this is from the 1st to the 30th of November, so the full month included, and any comparisons, the 22% up from the 0.6% down, that's compared to the 1st to the 30th of October. So not a full representation of where it was in October, because it doesn't include the 31st, because it just goes the same number of days, but it gives a fair indication of how it went for the month. So just having a quick run through this and making sure it's clear what it all means. Total sales will be everything, including postage fees that I've charged, as well as the actual sale fees. So £4,579, but I'm going to take £205 off of that. I'll explain why in a wee minute. So that's £4,374 in total sales. My selling costs include all of the postage that I paid through eBay, as well as my actual fees, which leaves net sales of 1848. Now, if I'm taking 205 off my total sales, I need to do the same off of my net sales. Again, I'll explain why that is in a moment or two. So £1,643, and my selling costs in there. Now, 22% up on the previous month is good, but when I discount that 205, it's going to be down closer to 10, 12, 14% up on the previous month, whereas my net sales are down. However, in October, eBay changed over so that you could buy more of your postage labels from the different companies through eBay. So that number is much higher than it would have been the previous month. Typically it's around about 51, 52%, but this month it's higher because it's accounted all of my postage costs, which means that realistically that number there should be about 10% up on the previous month. So I've made about 10% more in net sales. From there I would need to deduct my cost of goods. I don't add it up as to what I spent on the stuff that sold. I just look at it from what I spent in month, and that would be round about £600 I spent on stock throughout November. So not a big spend over the month, but that's going to take that down to round about £1,000 net sales I'll have made over the 30 days. So not a huge amount of money, not life changing, that's for sure, but for the number of hours I put into it, it's quite acceptable to me. So quantity sold 980, not 981, which is an improvement on the previous month. Average sales round about the same. I mean, that 6.8% difference really doesn't make a huge amount of difference. So an alright month, nothing spectacular, but an alright month. If we were to consider that across the year, if we keep going at 4.5 throughout the year, then that's going to be round about £50,000 to £55,000 in total sales across the year. So that's at the moment that's an improvement on the previous year. Going from like 48 up to about 55. It's a nice wee increase if that maintains over the year, but we'll need to see if that happens. Right, total buyers, those that know this will know this, and those that don't won't. Repeat buyers, a big part of what I'm trying to achieve in the business is to generate repeat buyers. So that looks really low, only 7 repeat buyers across the time period selected in November, but what that means is there were 7 repeat buyers who bought from me more than once in November, not 7 buyers who have bought from me more than once. So it's a bit of a misdirect in that one there. I do have a number of people who have bought from me several times that won't be counted in that number because it's more than the month since they previously purchased. So 399 one-time buyers, 7 repeat buyers, and one of them can get discounted as well, and I shall now show you why. Before I go with the rest, this number here, £205, my son sold his Xbox. So that's his. Obviously it's through the business account, so I pay my taxes and everything on it, but I'm not counting that as part of my sales because it was a wee extra and the money went to him, basically. But a bit of a breakdown, we can see that we had just over £3,000 in normal book sales, a couple of £100 in the antiquarian and collectibles, 120 in adult learning. There's another £40 or £50 that went on some reference books. So you can see the bulk of my sales are obviously books. 150 quid on DVD sales. I've said before, I have a stack of them. They go out, they don't make me much money, but they're easy to have, easy to sell, so I'll just let them run. So that's kind of the figures. Having a look at the monthly sales chart, which I find quite intriguing. £3,000 excluding postage. So that's the number I look at because my postage costs are my postage costs. I don't make any profit on the postage. What I charge, I pay. I probably pay a wee bit more because eBay obviously charge you fees on the postage you charge as well. So I probably take a small hit against my postage. So I look at this number here, this £3,099, which across 30 days is £100 a day. Now, you may have heard me go on before about is there some sort of eBay sales cap, and you can see the green's the postage, the blue's the actual cost or value of sales. So looking at the blue lines, and it's fairly consistently round about that £100 mark right across the month. Stayed fairly consistent for the first few days, a couple of slower days, and then we had that big day, but that day is the day my son sold his Xbox. So £205 of that 280 was not mine, which brings it back down in line with the previous 2 days. However, because I sold so much that day, it then appeared to plummet. So that took me above the £100 average. By the time I got back to here, I was back on the £100 average. So you can see how that drops down and why I think there is some sort of something in the algorithm that kind of caps out what you get customers wise, and then you can see it balances out across the rest of the month. Towards the end of the month, much more consistent and getting above the £100, so I'm hoping that's kicking into Christmas and completely disproves any ideas I've got about a sales cap. I don't really think there is a sales cap on it. I just want to understand how sales work so that I can go beyond that £100, because it's been like that for months. And as I've said before, I've taken my stock value from like £20,000 up to nearly £28,000 now, and it's stayed flat across the month. Possible Christmas sales towards the end have improved it, but even at that £125, it's not exactly, smashing through that £100 barrier. Nearly £200 in sales the day before. Was that an anomalous exception and it's now going to plummet? We'll have to wait and see. But we won't go much more into this, I promise. The actual selling costs breakdown, it's always good to keep an eye on this. So the way I always assume it will be is eBay gets a third, postage gets a third, and I get a third. So although I've got my cost of goods and packaging and everything to come out of my cut as well, Royal Mail and eBay make a lot more money than I do off of the work that I do. Obviously they've got their costs as well, but that's how I would expect that to be roughly 50-50 between the two of those, and then I get the same amount again, so about £1,400 off the back of that. So I'm a wee bit below that this month, it's just gone, but it is what it is. The other thing that I pay attention to is where my big sellers have been. So you can see 41 Ian Rankin books sold in November, so it was nearly £100 in total sales, but it cost me 60 quid to sell them, so I actually only made £38 from selling those 41 books, but it lets me see what my rough return per book is, and it's just under £1. The DVDs that go, so 39 of those sold in total from the classics, which is just my kind of general DVD haul, and making £19 from that, so about 50p a title, which again I'm quite happy with. You can see the ones where you make a wee bit more money if you look at your own stuff this way. So 34 Lee Child, I made 40, 32 Peter May, only 22. So Lee Child, I charge more than I do Peter May. It really is as simple as that. But looking down through it, for the most part, when I add it all up, the average is round about £1 a book I make when I'm selling them. The Gerald Seymour ones there, 18 of them, that was one sale on the last day of the month, and that got me £1 a book back as well. Obviously my selling costs and everything need to come out that as well. So it's worth looking at this stuff to make sure that you've got a really clear understanding of how your business is performing, what's working, what's not. So I'd be looking down here to say, right, well, there are 10 Peter Robinson books, and I only made £6.04. So what I'd want to do is go and have a look at why. I can tell you, because I've already looked at that. Peter Robinson I sell for £1.99 a book plus postage, so that's not going to make a huge amount of money, and quite a few sold when I had it on as buy one get one free for a few days over Black Friday, so that explains that low value. The same again for Dan Brown. They were going cheap and they sold over Black Friday, so therefore, you know, down to 70 pence a book I'm getting on that one. But for the most part, everything else lines up, and hopefully that lets you see the kind of titles that sell the most out of all of this. And my James Patterson listings have still completely died, so I've done a few tweaks to them to see if we can get them back up, because normally he would have been sitting up the top there at about 70 books. But see what's happening with that. So that is the shape of the finances for the month. This is a business, it's not just me putting money in my pocket, so the business has made the amount of money I was talking about, and I take a wage out of that and then obviously have to pay my taxes. So, you know, making hundreds of pounds a month off of doing this for spending a couple of hours a day throughout the month, sometimes a bit more, sometimes considerably less. So it's not big money, but it's a nice wee earner from my point of view. Having a look at the traffic report, now the sales report there was very, very flat right across the month. You know, it was typically that £100 a day with a couple of exceptions. But if we look at the traffic report, so we've got the page views, the impressions page views, etc., which it's good to make sure that they're not dropping off for any reason, so it highlights things. But when you look at the actual quantity sold, you can see it varies much more than the sales value. So again, each of these days is roughly £100 in sales, but they vary hugely throughout the month. And you can see the line from the previous month, it's the same. It's a very jagged line, considering that the sales level is fairly consistent across the same piece, which again is what makes me think, well, there's a day where everything was pretty low value, so it took 66 books to get to the £100 mark. There's a day with only 12 sales having gone out, and yet that was still close to the £100 mark. So that always makes me wonder what's going on. We're on the 1st of December, so looks like it's kicking off quite nicely. 1:45 in the afternoon, and we've already hit 25 sales, 25 books out, and that's about £60 in sales as well, so hopefully that's going to keep us going. 1,000 sold across, this isn't just the month obviously, because it's including the 1st of December, so there's a few extras in there, but that's what I look at to consider exactly what is happening in my business, and to decide whether or not I need to go in and be looking at individual listings or tweaking my promoted listings or anything such as that. Anyway, a quick share. I hope that's of interest to some people. Make sure that if you're selling yourself, you do pay attention to the metrics, or the devil's in the detail. Get as much data as you can and keep looking at it and keep thinking about what it means, and comparing it to different things so that you can understand it as best you can and find just the little tweaks. So continuous improvement, just what little tweaks you can make that might improve it over time. And if you try and increase one thing by 100%, you'll fail, you won't be able to. But if you can increase 100 things by just a point something of a percent, then you could get a 30, 40, 50% increase across the full business, which is key. And example of that, if your packaging is typically 10 pence and you can get that down to 9 pence, then that's a 10% increase saving on your packaging, which will add up over the period of time. And if at the same time your cost per item's gone from 50p down to 40p, then again that adds up a wee bit there. But if you're going to try and take your costs from 50p down to 10p, you'll struggle to do that. If you're going to try and get your packaging from 10p down to a penny, you're going to struggle to do that without having to do it on a huge scale, buy absolutely loads of stuff. So look for those, use all of this data and the metrics to find all those wee tiny improvements that you can keep making, that will improve the overall business. Anyway, that's all for now. I'll leave it at that. Love ya. See ya. Bye. Can't find the button. Bye.